Alright, here we go. Episode 1, War on Wealth. The first episode is going to be about Israel versus Palestine. It's definitely one of the most current issues that's going on in the world right now, which is going to be the theme of my mini pods or pods that you can just watch a little video. The editing's not the greatest, but you can just listen. And it's going to be about the most current relevant issues from a neutral perspective with a focus on the main problem, which is wealth and wealth inequality. As for me staying anonymous, I used to work at a bank and I'm going to be talking shit, so you know how that is. Back to Israel versus Palestine. We should do a little bit of history for some context, probably start back with the Ottoman Empire. To be more specific, this was around, for those of you who don't know, the Ottoman Empire is modern day Turkey. So Istanbul used to be called Constantinople, and that was the capital of the Ottoman Empire. So that collapsed around the early 1920s, like every regime does. And I think if you rely on the news, you think this happened just a couple weeks ago, but you should always go back a little bit further. In this case, we're going back 100 years for some context. So at that time, the Brits were in charge because they had the strongest army, and whoever has the strongest army rules the world. The land was given to the British, and also at the time there was a movement called Zionism. And Zionism is just an ideology and national movement among Jewish people to reestablish land in order to create a state, aka Israel. I'm sure that had to do with there was some foreshadowing there of what was to come with World War II, but we can touch on that some other time. So after World War II was actually when the land was able to be divvied up that was created, and it was, not to be all conspiracy theory on you, but it was created by none other than the Rothschilds. So the Rothschilds made a plan or ideology of how the land was going to be divvied up between Israel versus Palestine. If you don't believe me, you can Google the Balfour Declaration and go down your own Rothschild rabbit hole. Interesting fact, if you look at all the civil war that's going on in the world, you can trace its roots back to the British Empire, or the colonization from the British Empire. The French to a certain extent, but mostly the British. I wonder what Harry's hot take would be on that, as he's the product of ruthless colonization that's still ever present in these war-torn countries today. I believe that would be a more interesting topic, but who gives a shit what he has to say? I'm not a big fan of the royals, but that's for another day, all royals. So back to our story. Creating the land, it was based on whether if you were Muslim or Jewish. So a portion of the land was given to Palestine, and a portion of the land was given to Jewish people. If you believed in Abraham, or if your parents' believed in Abraham, or the linkage to Abraham. So all three of the major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all come from Abraham, but at some point, everyone hates each other. From there, the land has steadily decreased for Palestinians and increased for Israelis. And they do this by settlements, so they'll pick, I guess, random families in certain areas and evict them, and then Jewish people come in and settle and create little communities. So if you look at the map, it just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller for the green, and it's heading towards complete annihilation. I'm sure that, well, when I say I'm sure, I mean I think. I think that Jared Kushner's Middle Eastern plan, well, that was his claim to fame. And part of that was recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and they also moved their embassies there. And obviously, peace never happened in the Middle East. And also part of that plan, it's called Trump Peace Plan. He loaded up the Middle East with more missiles and weapons from the industrial military complex, including Saudi Arabia got a really large portion. Up to more currently, the current point of right now with this conflict, it was during the Ramadan, which is the holy month of Islam. So this is the second Ramadan during COVID lockdowns, And I think we can all agree that the world leaders are pretty awful at handling crisis situation and have been flexing a lot and further violating people's rights. That's another subject as well. So the lockdown was happening and they were flexing. And as I mentioned before about the settlements, there was 4 families being evicted. I'm pretty sure it was 4, it might have been 1. But either way, they were evicting a family. So the family's being evicted, and the lockdown, and the last day of Ramadan's called Eid. And Eid is like Christmas Eve for Christians, but instead of getting presents, you get to eat during daylight, because Muslims celebrate Ramadan by fasting for the month, and then they don't eat during the day, and then the last day of the month or fast, it's called Eid, and it's a celebration. You have lots of food. I went to one of my friends before. It's a really lot of food. So that celebration was happening in a mosque. The Israeli army or police force, whatever you want to call it, basically did a raid, Antifa style or Proud Boy style, whatever side you're on, with gas and scaring the shit out of everyone, basically. This mosque was also significant. It's called the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and it's the 3rd holiest place for Muslims. And if you put that in perspective, Jerusalem's the holiest place for Jews and Christians, and the 2nd place would probably be Vatican for Christians, and then a 3rd, you could probably pick a church. It doesn't have to be Notre Dame, but I think Notre Dame would be up there. The mainstream media of the burning of Notre Dame was completely different than the burning of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's my opinion. In retaliation to the raids on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Hamas, which is the de facto military, militia, terrorist organization, whatever you want to call it, launched missiles that actually really had no threat of reaching their target. They were shot down by the Iron Dome, the Rafael Advanced Defense System. They're the videos that you see with like all the rockets in the air. Interesting fact, the U.S. taxpayer paid to supply batteries for the Iron Dome under the Biden administration. In retaliation to all of that, the Israeli Air Force, which is basically Lockheed Martin F-16 Raptors and Raytheon heat-seeking missiles, to launch an airstrike. So they killed a bunch of civilians. They shot down the main media building that housed Al Jazeera, which is the Middle Eastern news, and the Gaza Strip also had Associated Press office there as well. The death toll that I've seen, or last looked at, was around 240 or 250 Palestinians. Included 5 top Hamas commanders, that media building, a bunch of kids, to 12 Israelis, and there were no executives or shareholders or politicians killed, just innocent people and some commanders. Seems pretty convenient as well that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, or President, leader, whatever you want to call it, was unable to form a new government recently and is facing criminal corruption charges. I think every party leader or person in power is guilty of some kind of corruption or ethic violation. It's just a matter of if you're the right person still, or you're toting the line or the corporate agenda in accordance. So it's not even his own people want this guy around. He comes from an ideology. His dad was Ivy League professor, Zionist, and his grandfather was a Zionist, so he's a Zionist. Not that I think that Jewish people shouldn't have a state. The point is that he grew up with a fundamental, privileged, unwavering ideology, and that makes for a horrible leader. Because you never really can consider both sides if you've only ever thought one way. You need to have appreciation for both sides, or in the middle. I don't know why everyone has to be on the other side. Why can't we just be in the middle for a minute? So that kind of leader has to go, which is part of the problem, which is be part of the solution. Another problem is the media. For example, just the name of these companies like Sony Pictures and 20th Century Fox, Lionsgate, Universal, NBC, New York Times, The Tribune, Discovery, Google, Facebook are all run by Jewish people, which there's nothing wrong with that in theory. But if the only media outlet in Gaza, or the main media outlet, was destroyed, you have all the news, all the opinions that are kind of on the same page versus no media or no opinions. That alone tells you that you're not seeing both sides of the story or both positions. I kind of realized that too over the last year. If you look at headlines and they're all worded the same way, it's a little bit suspect, and you should maybe look a little bit further. More fair press, getting rid of Benjamin. The land is the next major issue. There can no longer be a decreasing of Israel, or decreasing of Palestine and increasing of Israel. There has to be a solid line and two states, a two-state solution, a legitimate two-state solution. If you look at the size of the country, it's not big, it's maybe the size of Maine, and this situation is creating a minority oppressed group of people, which never works out. I can't remember which human rights organization said that currently it's an apartheid situation. The next culprits in this whole situation actually are the beneficiaries, which is the industrial military complex. They benefit from this. They're shareholders, they're executives, they make more money. And on the other side, kids are getting blown up. There's actually this video of this girl, and I'm going to play it now, but it's pretty crazy. And this is the news that should be covered, and this is what every outlet should cover and should be on the front page, because this is the real consequence of war.
I'm only 10. I can't even do anything this morning. I just want to be a doctor or anything to help my people, but I can't. I'm just a kid. I don't even know what to do. I get scared, but not really that much. I do anything for my people, but I don't know what to do. I'm just 10. I'm just 10. All of this, when I see it, I literally cry every day, saying to myself, why do we deserve this? What did we do to this?
They're just kids. And kids are manipulated, and they're just brought up to believe a certain way, and they feel like they're fighting for their identity. So the Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS of the world need to figure out a way to become a national army, or integrate into a national army and represent the people of their country, not the specific interests of the coup or the military leader at the time. So you have to get rid of the top in order for that to happen. But a younger generation, people growing up, their minds can be changed. We can get Facebook or Twitter to change their mind. No, I'm just kidding. Ceasefire has been called. It's a short-term solution, but it's not going to solve anything going forward. The people that benefit are still going to benefit. And I think that these targets would have happened either way, whatever the spark might have been. All that being said, this is the most media coverage that showed a little bit of the other side for the first time in a while. And the upside is that the media is trying to stay relevant, so they have to position more than one side every now and then. And the internet channels that have like people that actually have like well thought out ideas or ways of looking at situations are starting to make an impact. The actual power comes from the collective, and you can see the sparks and the different groups that are mad, but in reality they should all be mad at the same thing, which is the redistribution of wealth. Thanks for listening to my podcast, War on Wealth. Subscribe, like,